Okay, as promised, we are back with Predator versus Wolverine Part 2, and then we have to wait another month for the third issue. So what this does is, much like the previous issue, it picks up kind of in the modern day when Wolverine is facing off against a Predator, and then it jumps back to a previous point in which they fought. Now, what is cool about this, normally I wouldn't cover it, but what is cool about this is that this guy's just clinging to the side of a building. And as you guys can probably tell, there's a lot of just callbacks to like the original Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Like that's really what this is. Him clinging to the side of a mountain, trying to give himself a chance to recover, and so on and so forth. But one of the other things to know is that in the present right now, Wolverine has his adamantium claws. But when we jump back to the point where the last video ended, we jump back to the 1960s when he was on Team X, before he got his adamantium. And so that's one of the things to know. Now, he is rapidly approaching that moment, but in the here and now, one of the things to remember is every time Wolverine went on a mission for Team X, his memories were wiped. And so somewhere between the previous issue and this issue, his memories of his first encounter with the Predator were completely wiped away. So for him, this is all new. Now, one of the cool things that's given here by Benjamin Percy, and I love the way he does this, he kind of gives us a quick little rundown of what Team X is. And for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with it, it's explained like that, right? Team X was a dirty crew that did dirty jobs. Assassinate a politician, blow up a dam, seize an oil platform, take out a cartel. All in the name of geopolitical subversion. It's a wet work team, right? It's a Black Ops team. That's really all these guys are. But in this instance, they were sent to this part of the world in order to stop a coup. Now, what he says here is he says, we found ourselves instead in the middle of a borderless war. We were already down to 4 against their 5. What they were, I didn't know. Like everyone else on Team X, my memories were regularly deleted, but I had carried this weapon with me over the years. What he's talking about here is like the smart disk of the original Predator. He just had it in his possession. Presumably after his memories were wiped, he woke up with it and then maybe used it once or twice, realized what it was, and was like, I'm gonna hold on to this, but didn't quite recall how he actually got it. But what he says is, it was like a scar, a relic of pain I understood 2 of us somehow shared. And so this is when he grabs this thing, right, activates it, and throws it at the Predator. And because it's so dangerous, right, like this thing can take Predators out. And that's what's so cool, is because it operates like a boomerang, right? You throw it, it hits its target, and then you basically recall it back. The funny thing here is he tells like Maverick and the rest of Team X to basically back out, right? To get out of there as fast as they can. Now, but Wolverine knows enough to know these guys are not to be trifled with, right? The very fact that they just kind of stumbled onto these guys and being unaware of the fact that they were there is what tips them off. Because remember, even though Wolverine does not have adamantium, he does have all his other powers, enhanced senses and all that kind of stuff. He couldn't detect these guys, which means they're not to be trifled with. And so he's like, we gotta go, we gotta back out, we gotta basically remarshal ourselves, figure out what we're gonna do and how we're gonna confront this. But Sabertooth, ever the man who loves death and destruction, is like, nope, we're gonna unload on these guys with a minigun. So like Jesse Ventura from Predator 1, right? So literally he just starts spraying the whole area down with a minigun in probably the most Sabertooth way ever. And in fact, one of the Predators gets the upper hand and basically gets behind him. But if you talk to anybody who knows anything about Sabertooth, there's 2 things to understand. Number 1, Sabertooth, as he's been depicted in recent years leading up to Fall of X, was nowhere near as amazing as he was in the 80s when he was just like this hyper-violent, crazy guy who would just tear people apart. Like it was, oh God, I loved Sabertooth, not so much in the original Iron Fist comic, but like when he was part of Chris Claremont's X-Men, that's when he was at his best. But the second thing is, Sabertooth just has bloodlust. This guy lives for war and chaos and pandemonium. It's his thing. And so that's why, even though like this Predator stabs him through the back with like a smart stick, you have him who just like pulls a dagger and stabs a Predator through the stomach, lifts it up, and while both of them are seemingly taken out, this Predator's basically donezo. And so at that point, like Jackson, Maverick, and Wolverine bolt, right? Now they're not like running out of cowardice. It's like, Again, it's just getting themselves to a place where they can marshal their forces and they can say, we need to ensure that we're in a spot where these things, whatever they are, can only attack us from a direction that we can see, right? Because the last thing you want to do is just be in like a kill box, right? Where like you can be hit from any direction, right? That's the last thing that you want. And so just to clarify, right, there's 2 predators down, there's 3 more left, right? Now that's the crazy thing that I love about Team X, is because the fact that they could take out 2 so fast, it's believable. It's absolutely believable that this team could do it, just given how prodigious they are. Just to give you guys perspective, Wolverine was so capable that in Marvel Comics, he's actually the guy that helped to train the Black Widows in the Red Room, right? That's how good this guy is. And so one of the things that happens here is poor Jackson, man, Jackson didn't gonna make it. Jackson doesn't make it, right? Because as they're bolting, one of the predators lowers down this kind of rope, right? Like a noose essentially, snatches up Jackson, Jackson's head comes clean off, body comes crashing down to the ground, and literally like you just have Wolverine and Maverick who are just shooting up into the air. Because one of the things to know is that yes, if they're given a moment to actually analyze their surroundings, they would likely be able to see these guys, if for no other reason than the fact that while you do have a cloaking device for these predators, again, much like you've seen in the movies, it refracts light, it bends light, as opposed to making them truly invisible. So all you have to do is just find like where it looks like the forest is moving. But like in this gigantic forest, they would likely kill you before you could actually figure out where they were, right? Just moving around so fast and whatnot, right? That's why the predators, right? The Yautja, they're like the perfect hunters. It's just, maybe the xenomorphs are better. Let me know which one you guys think are the better hunters. Technically, predators hunt xenomorphs as a rite of passage, so you could argue xenomorphs are the better hunters and predators. Regardless, it doesn't matter. The thing about this is that like once this massive explosion goes off, you basically have Maverick and Wolverine who are taken unawares. One of the predators tries to use this as a moment to attack. Now, one of the things that I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this, in the traditional predator mythos, they are hunters of honor, right? They are beings that hunt for honor, unless you're talking about Adrian Brody's predators where like they hunt for sport and they don't really care about the honor of it, depending on that kind of faction civil war that's going on, whatever. But I have a hard time believing that a predator would incapacitate these guys with a massive explosion and then go directly after them. I would prefer to believe, and this is kind of my viewpoint on it, I would prefer to believe that a predator would want to take them out in one-on-one combat. But again, you know, I guess it's just kind of determinate based on the mythos and how you perceive it and so on. But Maverick realizes that one of these guys is running up on him, pulls out a pistol just in time to spray these guys down, and that's it. Now, that's where things are a little murky because, of course, as we know with the predator mythos, just shooting it with a bullet isn't really enough to take one of these things out. And shooting it with multiple bullets wouldn't necessarily be the case, right? Like one, they're incredibly dense and incredibly strong. And two, they have the ability to heal using their own technology. So while it wouldn't necessarily kill this guy per se, it would be enough to incapacitate him and at the very least send him running. But regardless, this guy's killed. And so what you have is Maverick and Wolverine who take up refuge in an old Mayan temple. Now, what's crazy about this is now it's 2-on-2, right? 2 predators and then Maverick and Wolverine. And so once they get into this temple, they find all these explosives around, right? TNT, the whole 9 yards. And they're all kind of just set to detonate, right? I mean, it's just like detonators rigged these things and so on and so forth. Then they're met with the general who's actually the one orchestrating the coup. Now, it's not a great big huge thing that goes on here with the general. It's just long enough to establish everybody's motivation, that the general and his troops retreated to this place once the predators showed up, because the predators were just like cutting a swath through these guys, right? I mean, just absolutely crushing these guys. That's all it was. And so this is one of those instances where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Now, one of the things I also want to point out here is, again, you can tell that Wolverine's claws are currently bone claws. They're not adamantium yet. It's the reason why he hasn't just so easily crushed these predators, because I would have to believe, right? Like Wolverine with adamantium claws and an adamantium skeleton, plus his healing factor, fighting a predator would be child's play, right? It would be no contest, which really begs the question, what's going on in the modern day between the Predator and Wolverine and this fight that's actually leading Wolverine to like bide his time and like heal himself and so on and so forth. Have the Predators just become that much more advanced and the adamantium doesn't matter. But regardless, right, in the here and now, right, at the time this story is being told, you basically have these guys who are just kind of standing there, just monitoring and just keeping an eye out in case they see anything. And one of them asked the question, like, do you think maybe they left, right? Maybe they won't come after us. This poor bastard gets his head blown apart, right? Like the shoulder cannon just annihilates this dude's head. One of them pops his shield like he's straight up Captain America, comes lunging into this place and like just takes these guys out, right? Just like that, annihilates these guys. And so following that, you have Wolverine and Maverick that leave the smart disc sitting out there on a piece of rock for the Predators to locate and then basically attain. What's crazy about this is they rigged the entire place to explode, right? They rigged the whole place to blow up. That sure, they get their device back, but then it's just like beep, 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 like all these bombs are getting ready to go off and the whole place gets blown to smithereens. Now the reality here is that Professor Thornton, the guy who runs Weapon X, he doesn't really care about Predators, probably doesn't even really know that they existed or anything like that. And if he does, he's seemingly not too concerned about it. But he probably would be if he knew about them, right? Weapons Plus is always in the business of like finding some kind of new super soldier, some technology that can be used for profit, right? Creating Wolverine, so on and so forth. And so Wolverine actually does the general a solid where he says, like, he tells Professor Thornton, the mission went off without a hitch. Anybody that we were supposed to kill is dead, right? Like everything's cool. Nothing could have survived that, only for us to find out that at least one of the Predators did. Now at that point, switch over to Alberta, Canada at the Weapon X facility, right? Now, the reason why Weapon X is in Alberta, Canada is because the Weapon X program at that point was a joint venture between the United States CIA and Canada's Department H, right? They're kind of superhero initiative to a degree. And so that's why it's based out of here. But this, as most everybody knows, is where Wolverine undergoes the adamantium bonding process. And so what happens is a Predator shows up and then like kills one of the guards. The other one's just kind of like, what in the world is going on? And then this guy, wow, right, gets like a dagger to the throat. And then while he's laying there, the Predator just like dumps that gunk all over his face, right? And it's just like, damn, Benjamin Percy, dude, that's hardcore, man. Like, damn, like, dude, that's not even like achieving a mission. That's just being a dick. So then the Predator in turn goes through and takes out every single person in the Weapon X facility. Now, this is the cool thing, right? Here's a really cool thing that you could argue here, right? We don't know if this story is actually in continuity in Marvel Comics. You could potentially argue that it is, depending on how Benjamin Percy wants to end it. I would argue it's not, right? It's just kind of a story that exists out there. But if Marvel says that it is in continuity, the fact that the Predator slaughters everybody here and then escapes, that kind of fits in perfectly with the Wolverine mythos, because when Wolverine escaped, basically everybody was destroyed. And so there wasn't really any actual person out there that could recall and state explicitly what had happened, at least as far as I'm concerned. Abraham Cornelius, Carol Hines, Professor Thornton, they were the three who ran the program. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm sure you guys will, right? You guys love waiting until I get something wrong. It's like, actually, Rob, but like, let me know, right? Like, let me know if I'm wrong about that. I don't think I am. I think they all died during the original Weapon X breakout by Wolverine, and they weren't able to get him back. But this kind of fits in perfectly with everything. But regardless, this Predator smashes into the place. And as he gets up to Wolverine, he's actually getting the adamantium bonding process, right? Like it's being bonded to his skeleton. So seemingly this Predator is gonna leave him alone, right? Because again, Predators don't really kill unarmed foes. And while it may be pissed off about the fact that Wolverine killed all of his friends, at the end of the day, it is all about the honor of the hunt. So likely it'll walk away and it'll wait until Wolverine pops back up again and the two of them will fight. Which begs the question, what happens when these two fight and Wolverine has an adamantium skeleton? I'd bet all the money in my pockets to all the money in your pockets, they're gonna fight in Japan. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. If you guys need to get caught up on Predator versus Wolverine, make sure you click this link to the playlist, and I will catch you all later. Peace.